Hello, and thank you for tuning in to Southeast Media's Sunrise, dedicated to giving a voice to authors of all genres. I'm your host, Jodi Hockinson. Joining us remotely by phone today is Ken Johnson, author of A Quick Guide to Archetypes and Allegory, a writer resource guide. To all of our writers in the audience, this will help you to better understand and capitalize on the knowledge of character creation. With this quick, handy reference guide, you can make your stories more relatable and appealing to your targeted audience. It will help show you how to move along from good to exceptional. Ken Johnson is a culturalist, a.k.a. social scientist, conflict specialist, business consultant, artist, and a multiple award-winning author. He routinely writes and lectures on issues of culture and conflict. When not writing and lecturing, Ken loves attending cultural events, cooking, outdoor sports, and feather painting. He also serves on numerous nonprofit and professional boards. In 2005, the governor of Kentucky commissioned Ken as a colonel. Later in 2018, the Florida Authors and Publishers Association honored him with their most prestigious award possible, the Founders Award. Presently, Ken Johnson lives in Northwest Florida with his wife, Tashanna. They have 3 little dogs, which Ken calls his editors for their propensity to mess with his keyboard when wanting his attention. Welcome, Ken, and thank you for joining us today.
Nice to be here, Jodi.
Can you tell our listeners, what is an archetype?
Archetype goes back in psychology with Jung. And Jung said that there are certain primordial icons that we innately know. So if you talk about a vampire, you talk about a werewolf, you talk about a femme fatale, a hero, a anti-hero, those are all archetypes. It's just a character type is pretty much is the best way to say it.
And can you explain what an allegory is?
With your archetypes, each one of those have a certain metaphor that they represent, a hidden message. And so an allegory is that hidden message that you're trying to convey by using that certain archetype. So a good writer will find an archetype that matches up with the allegory they're trying to impart, so that on a subconscious level, the author and the reader are on the same page.
So in one of your chapters, you talk about a unicorn being an archetype. What would be the allegory that's associated with that?
The unicorn is very interesting as an archetype. It is basically about a woman's innocence. It goes all the way back through biblical history, and so it is where a woman is giving over her virginity and her control to a male. It's not set in stone. So just because I say the allegory typically is, it doesn't mean that has to be it. It just means that you have more work as a writer to change that allegory.
Speaking of things set in stone, you received a little online criticism, most notably from a small segment of the dark romance writing community, because your book supports cliches. What's your opinion about that?
Well, it was a small group, and it's always a punch to the stomach when you get criticism about what you're doing, especially if you care as much about it as I do. But the cliche is when you're doing something over and over again without any thought, and it just becomes tired and boring. And archetype and allegory is something that you're actually engaging somebody at a deep subconscious level. That is something totally different than a cliche. And the problem is, I think that we're losing a grasp of literature, of the English language. And so a lot of these, there are certain types of authors, they come up with these ideas, it must be cliche because it's a vampire, or it must be cliche because you're talking about these characters a certain way. And that's not the case. It's good to state what it is, what it traditionally is, point out how it can be changed, and that way you can elevate your writing style. So I'm not trying to promote cliches. I'm actually trying to make it where you understand the basis of what you're doing, just like an artist would look at colors and understand the different elements of contrast and complementary colors and all that, so that you can actually perfect your work and elevate literature to a different level.
I totally agree. You devoted an entire chapter of your book to non-humanoid archetypes. Can you tell us why?
Well, a lot of archetypes deal with the humanoid character, and the reason why I did non-humanoid was a non-humanoid does not represent humans. Everything that's humanoid means human. So it's an aspect of us. It's an aspect of our psyche. The more human it's like, the more it resonates with us. So when I was talking about the Leviathans or all these different creatures, they're talking about elements of nature, of forces that are beyond just human control and human understanding. And it's very important because, for instance, we're seeing an increase in shark stories right now. And the shark is definitely an archetype, especially big sharks, because it has been protector of the oceans. And with all the talks for the last 30 years or more about how we're destroying our environment, and all of a sudden from the human psyche, the shark comes up as a protector, and now we're seeing all these shark movies out, and everybody's like, oh, this shark is going to kill us. It's actually just a way for the author or the script writer to say, look, we know we're destroying our Earth, if you believe that, and this is how we can talk about this in a way that it won't be off-putting.
In your book, you talk a lot about comic characters.
Well, comic characters, they tend to rely off of archetypes and allegory more than a lot of adult stuff. Adults are very, very, they can go either way. They're very capricious in the types of archetypes that they'll read. So a child, though, they will pick up on a certain archetype and the allegory based off of their life experiences and their position in life right now. And so for this reason, you might find a young girl that's coming of age. She's very into vampires because that vampire carries a very specific allegory, whereas a young boy of the same age may be very much into werewolves because it carries a totally different type of allegory. And so it's good to understand this because we need to understand how to not only write stories that relate to them, but also for parents, it's good to understand what those archetypes mean so that we make sure that there's not something hidden or subliminally going on in the storyline that may not jive up with our value system.
In your book, you mentioned how the popularity of certain archetypes vacillates. For example, pirate-based stories seem to be less popular. You also noted a period of time when hero stories saw an uptick. And there's an odd situation where adult-based mummy story popularity is down, but children-based mummy stories are up. Why is this?
Because you're dealing at the subconscious level, and you're dealing with how those icons resonate with us. It's based upon our life experiences and also where we're at in life. So, for instance, when we had the towers fall with the 9/11 attacks, you saw immediate uptick in songs, movies, stories about superheroes. We were wanting somebody to come to our aid. We was wanting somebody to make things right. So the superhero just soared. Shortly after that, you saw an uptick in mummies. The reason for that is with adults, the mummy represents an allegory relating to a religious power. And so because this was a religious attack on our nation that we were trying to work out in our minds, the mummy resonated with us and it became popular. And you can see this with The Mummy Returns. It did horribly in the movie theaters, but after 9/11, their rentals just soared. So now we have a case where we're no longer under attack or threat from a religious group trying to, impart their value system into America the way it was or the way it was perceived back then. And so adults are not reading a lot of mummy things. You can see it, a lot of the movies that they came out with and books they came out with are flops. And so the children, because they don't relate to that type of allegory, a lot of the stories are talking about actually science and how the Egyptians did things and the history, and they're learning it in school. And so therefore it is a learning tool. It's not a type of allegory. And so therefore they're seeing upticks in it because they think it's kind of cool. And they're not piecing together yet because they don't have that level of sophistication built into their mindset. Now, with pirates, our society, we went through a period of time when it was hard to find a job. People were underwater in their mortgages. And so we were less stable than what we are now. Of course, I live in the South, and a lot of the improvement in the economy hasn't hit my area as hard as I'd like for it to. I'd like for there to be much more improvement, but it is better than what it was. And so the pirate was always the person that said, I'm going to take life into my own hands. I can endure. I can fight it out. I can profit. I can succeed where no one else is. And so it did very well. Now that everybody is bringing in more money and has a little bit more security, the allure of the pirate is falling away.
You refer to a literary and cinematic shorthand in your book. What does that mean?
Well, I've really been talking about this whole interview. It is the ability of the author to realize that a given archetype has a given allegory tied to it. And if you're going to work with that, it's very easy to craft a story because you don't have to do a lot of build-up on the character. People know what a femme fatale is. People understand what a hero, anti-hero is. They understand a werewolf. They understand a dragon. So you don't have to do much to build up that character. If you're going to change the allegory, then all you have to do is put in a few things leading up to it, and you can go from there very quickly. So it is that knowledge allows you to do more with the actual story than worrying about all the development that a lot of the newer authors and the more inexperienced authors, they spend a tremendous amount of time in their books just trying to tell you what this character is and why it does what it does, rather than just telling the story. And that's what I want to do, is help authors to just tell the story and tell it very well. And by doing this shorthand, it allows them to do it with great ease.
Fantastic. So do you have any books coming out in the near future?
Yes, I'm doing a companion book to this series that will be about plots and plot lines. So we'll talk about plot twists, on what a pantster is and why you shouldn't be a pantster, and it will give you different ways of looking at how to develop your story. So Archetypes and Allegory will help you tell the story better, and then the plot and plot line will actually help you plot it out so it makes a more interesting story.
Looks like we're out of time. Anyone interested in purchasing this book can log into semediapro.com or visit Amazon. It is available on Kindle and in paperback. For more information, you can also follow Ken on Twitter, Instagram, or Facebook. And that was Ken Johnson, author of A Quick Guide to Archetypes and Allegory, a writer resource guide. Thanks again for joining us today, Ken.
Thank you.
And listeners, if you're interested in getting your book published, please visit us at semediapro.com and click on the book publishing link. This is Jodi Hockinson, host of Southeast Media Sunrise, Southeast Media Productions. Like us on Facebook at Southeast Media Productions, or visit our website at semediapro.com.